Good morning again, Drawing 1 students. What we want to do today is what I want to do in this demonstration is continuous line. So after you do your blind contours, then you want to try doing the continuous line, and you can certainly mix these up when you're drawing at home. You could do a couple blind contours and do a couple continuous lines. These are kind of a nice alternative to the blind contour. Just remember, with continuous line, the only rule is to keep the pen moving. It needs to move all the time. Otherwise, you can look at the paper. It's not a blind technique like blind contour is. You can correct, you can add dark areas, you can slowly, methodically build up the forms. That's what continuous line is all about, a very additive process. And you should draw the portrait as well as draw some of the stuff that's going on in the negative space, some of the stuff that's going on in the room. This is continuous line. It's a little bit different than the blind contour that we've done previously. It has less rules, and I think most people find this a little bit easier to do and are a little more comfortable with continuous line. One thing I forgot to tell you to do, but it's not too late, just take a piece of newsprint and slide it under your drawings, because you're going to get these little dots where the ink bleeds through. And it's not a big deal. These are not masterpieces that we're making here, but if you don't like that, you can always have a sheet that's going to be a blotter. Now, I'm going to start the continuous line. Just get a start on it, and maybe you can see some of the differences between blind contour and continuous line. I'm going to start, by the way, by holding the pen back almost like a stick. I don't need a lot of control to start a continuous line. Now, there is only one rule in continuous line. And that rule is that this pen cannot stop for any reason. But this is a much more fluid and forgiving process, and it's one where you can actually work more correctively. So I'm just going to block in the chin. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to draw that jaw, and I'm going to think of it as a jaw. Okay, I'm going to draw those shadows on the zygomatic arch of the face. I have this region where the eyes are going to be. My line is continuing. There's some really cool shadows that are cast here on his forehead. And I'm going to work my way gradually up to the top of his head. Okay, and then we'll kind of block in that hair, get an idea where the ear is. And I think I'll go ahead and get that neck drawn in. Just something like that. Okay, notice my pen has not stopped moving. Now I'm going to come back, and I'm going to choke up on my pen, and I'm going to start to add a little detail and start to work a little bit slower. A lot of these drawing techniques that we do are additive techniques, which means we add more and more of the actual medium that we're using. We will do some techniques that will be considered subtractive techniques a little later, but for now, these are additive. So I can slow down, take my time. I started off really fast, kind of loosey-goosey there. But now's my chance to come in and start to correct some things. So I can move those lips up a little higher. I think they need to be a little closer to the nose. I can start to shade that upper lip a little. There's nothing that you can't fix in a drawing. You can always come back and rework it. And you need to, because you know what I want to see is I want to see you struggling. I want to see you going through that process of saying, this isn't correct and I need to fix this. So I can come in, I can use these nice shadows that are cast on his face to create a sense of three-dimensionality. And I'm just going to keep my pen moving. So this is going to be a drawing technique that's going to take about 8 or 9 minutes to do. So that means you're going to continue to draw for 8 or 9 minutes. And don't lift your pen up. If you decide, like I just decided now that I want to come down here and add some value to the neck, you have to drive down there. You can't take your pen off the page. And this is important because this is what makes a continuous line look like a continuous line. It's this kind of obsessive line that runs through it. but it's also kind of a fun, whimsical little line. Continuous lines drawings, they always have almost like a sense of humor to them. They're kind of silly. But the thing that's nice about them is they quickly fill the page. And in fact, at some point, what I want you to do is I want you to come in here and add a little bit of what's in the background. So just come in here real quickly, and I got a bench back there. Draw that in. I have a light stand. With a little light on top. Draw that in, let that go off the page. There's another drawing horse in the background, so I'm going to draw those in. And I'm not even thinking about what kind of a job I'm doing here. I'm just drawing. I'm just kind of filling in that negative area back there. There's a little cabinet that'll go off to the edge. I'm going to drive over here. I don't have a lot on this side, but there's a couple drawings on the wall. And I'm just going to break up that negative space. And you might ask yourself, well, why are you doing this? This gives you an entire drawing, a completed drawing that fills the page. And then you can come back up, and to end, you can come up here and just start to really slow down. That line can kind of slow down to a crawl. And you can come in here and begin to build up some actual detail. So I can start to work on that contour of that eye. And you'll notice that I'm looking at my paper. This is not a blind technique. I can look at my paper all I want. You should be looking ultimately at what you're drawing more than anything else. But I can look at my paper to reset. That's within the rules. And just remember, the only rule here is that that line's got to keep moving. And if you get tired, let's say, you're like, oh my God, my brain hurts. I got to stop for a second. Just fill a place in. Take a breather. And one of the things you'll notice with my continuous lines is they're very methodical. I want my line to look like black spaghetti or yarn, okay? You want that line to look methodical. You don't want it to be sketchy, to run into itself. It needs to maintain itself as a line. So just keep that in mind too, that when you're making these marks, you want them to be kind of silly, squiggly little marks. Okay, I'm going to stop there. So with blind contour, continuous line, with continuous line, you can correct. You can do all those things that I said you can't do. And by the way, if you stop, just go back into it. Don't worry about it. Just don't make a point of stopping a lot. But if you have to stop for whatever reason, I wanted to fill in his nose a little bit. It was bugging me. But with with continuous line, just keep in mind you can correct. You can add things that you don't normally get to do with a blind contour. You can fill in areas. You can stop and just do some kind of mindless work to let your brain rest. But you got to keep the pen moving. That's the most important thing. So this is continuous line.